I'm Natalie, and I made the mistake of letting my sister Vanessa stay in my lakeside home, just until they got on their feet. 11 months later, I walked through my own front door and found her and her husband lounging in my living room like squatters who own the place. What started as kindness is now a turf war, and she dared to threaten me in my house. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. You ever walk into your home and feel like you're trespassing? It was a Friday afternoon when I pulled up to my lake house. My favorite little corner of the world, cedar framed, wrapped in silence with the smell of pine and wood smoke in the air. I hadn't been here in over a month. Work had been relentless and I was craving quiet, craving me. Instead, I got war. The moment I stepped inside, the crackle of the fireplace greeted me, along with the sound of clinking glasses and a low laugh that didn't belong to me. I followed the noise, heart thudding, and there they were. Vanessa, my sister, in my robe, curled up like a queen on my velvet chaise with a glass of Merlot in one hand and a smirk on her face. Her husband, Trevor, kicked back with his socks on my coffee table, feet up like he was at a ski lodge. A movie was playing. My candle, the expensive one from Paris, was burning, and not a single apology in sight. "Natalie," Vanessa said slowly, like I'd walked into her weekend getaway. "Didn't know you were coming up." I just stared, the nerve, the audacity. "This is my house," I said, not raising my voice yet. "Why wouldn't I come?" She shrugged and sipped. "We've been watching it for you. Trevor's been doing some repairs." Trevor chuckled. "We got that leak under the sink sorted. You're welcome, by the way." My hands clenched at my sides. "Get out." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." I said, "Pack your things and leave." "You weren't invited here. This is my home." That's when she stood up, wine glass still in hand, and looked at me like I was the crazy one. "Get out of here or I'll call the police," she snapped. I laughed. I actually laughed. "Try it and you'll regret it." That's when it turned. I saw it in her eyes, that flicker of rage that only ever shows up when she's backed into a corner. She slammed the glass down on the mantel so hard I thought it would shatter. "You think you can throw me out after everything?" She hissed. "We've been here, taking care of your house, taking care of your things." "You've been squatting," I shot back. "Inviting friends, using my kitchen like it's a community center. Vanessa, I let you stay because you said you needed time. That was 11 months ago." Trevor stood now, arms crossed. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" I stepped toward him, eyes locked. "You don't get to overstay your welcome and then pretend I'm the problem." And just like that, the house erupted. Doors slammed. Vanessa yelled something about betrayal. Trevor accused me of being dramatic. I locked myself in the upstairs bedroom just to breathe, heart pounding in my ears. Outside, the lake looked so still, like none of this chaos even existed. But inside my walls, my sanctuary, this was a full-blown occupation. And I had just declared war. The night crept in early, wrapping the lake in a misty silence, but inside my house, everything was jagged. Every corner of my sanctuary now felt foreign, like someone had rearranged the air. I stayed upstairs for a while, not because I was afraid, because I needed to think, needed to breathe. I heard them moving around downstairs. Heard Vanessa's footsteps, too loud, too bold, and Trevor's voice mumbling something about overblown drama. Just after 10, a knock came at my door. Not hers, his. Trevor's voice came through, low and rehearsed. "Natalie, can we talk?" I opened the door slowly. He was standing there barefoot, hair messy, hands tucked into the pockets of his hoodie like he was a college kid asking for an extension. "What?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, things got heated earlier. Can we just agree to not kill each other, at least for now?" I stared at him. "That depends. Are you actually planning to follow house rules while you're in my house?" He nodded quickly. "Yes, definitely. I think we got too comfortable, and that's on us. Let's just live in peace while we're here, all right?" "Peace," I echoed. "Trevor, this isn't a treaty negotiation. This is my house. You've treated it like a dorm common room." He gave a small chuckle, trying to charm his way past the tension. "Okay, fair, but still truce." I crossed my arms. "Fine, but only if you follow my rules. No guests, no touching my things. You clean up after yourselves. And absolutely no more locking me out of my own office, bathroom, or kitchen." "Agreed," he said immediately. "Totally fair. And I added. No more pretending like you belong here more than I do. This is not shared space. You're guests, temporary guests. His smile faltered for a half second, but he nodded. Got it. I closed the door before he could say anything else. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the reflection in my mirror. My face looked drawn, my eyes sharp with disappointment. It wasn't that I didn't want to believe Trevor, but I'd seen this pattern before. The peace offering always came after the storm, just long enough to regroup and plot the next invasion. Still, that night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Downstairs, Vanessa didn't even speak to me when I passed her in the hallway on the way to the kitchen. She sat curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket she didn't fold, watching some reality show with the volume turned down low. I poured a glass of water and walked back upstairs without saying a word. It felt like we were ghosts in each other's worlds. Same walls, different dimensions. And so the uneasy silence began. We existed under the same roof like opposing chess players in mid-game, each move calculated, each glance loaded. Trevor kept to himself mostly, fixing a leaky faucet in the guest bathroom and making coffee without touching any of my mugs. He even refilled the Brita. Vanessa, on the other hand, perfected the art of ignoring me. She glided past me in the hallway like I was the help. No good mornings. No eye contact. Just the sound of her acrylic nails tapping away on her phone. I noticed they'd separated the living areas without saying it out loud. Vanessa took over the den and guest bath. Trevor hovered between the kitchen and their basement suite. I stayed upstairs like a queen guarding the last tower in a crumbling castle. For 3 days, we kept the peace. But it wasn't real. It was that brittle kind of quiet that always comes before the next blow-up. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, it stalks. Every little sound made my nerves jump. A drawer opening. A cabinet slamming. Footsteps on the stairs. My body was constantly on edge like I was living in someone else's tension-filled airbnb. I stopped cooking full meals, ate cereal in my room, took my phone with me everywhere, even the bathroom. I didn't trust them anymore, not with my space, not with my belongings, and definitely not with my kindness. One evening, I came downstairs to find the thermostat had been cranked to 76 degrees. The fire was on. Every lamp in the living room was lit. I felt like I'd walked into a hotel lobby in hell. I turned off the fire and lowered the heat. An hour later, it was back on. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But I made a note of it. This wasn't peace. This was performative cooperation laced with passive resistance. Vanessa wasn't screaming anymore, but she was sending messages with every eye roll, every slammed door, every greasy dish left in the sink for me to find. Trevor played the peacemaker, but he wasn't innocent. He'd laugh a little too loud when Vanessa made one of her underhanded comments or forgot to wipe down the counter. But I kept my promise. I didn't escalate. Not yet. Because I was saving my energy, because I was watching every move, and because something told me, deep down in that place where gut feelings live, that the worst was still to come. There's a kind of war that doesn't need screaming. No fists, no weapons. Just almond milk disappearing, muddy footprints trailing through your foyer, and a Bluetooth speaker blasting club music at 12:17 a.m. on a Wednesday. That's how they fought me. Not with confrontation, but with corrosion. It started small. I went to pour milk into my coffee one morning and the carton was empty. I know I hadn't used it all. It was my fancy vanilla almond milk, the one that costs $6 and has to be shaken before pouring. The one they never buy. I peeked into the recycling bin and there it was, my empty carton stuffed right on top. I took a breath. No big deal. I'd get more later until it happened again. And again. 3 cartons in 1 week. Not a word from either of them. No, hey, I used some. No offer to replace it. Then it was the boots. Trevor had taken up some kind of early morning hiking habit, or at least he liked pretending he had won. Every morning, muddy boots caked with trail, dirt, and God knows what else were left right in the center of the foyer rug. Not tucked to the side. Not on the mat, just there like a statement. One morning I said it. Trevor, the foyer's not a swamp. Wipe your boots or leave them outside. He looked up from his bowl of cereal and said, I did wipe them. And Vanessa, from the couch without even glancing up from her phone, muttered, You're always so uptight, Nat. I blinked. I don't think expecting you to respect my house qualifies as uptight. She looked up then, slowly, like a cat stretching after a nap. It's a house, not a museum. Relax. It was always like that. Every boundary I drew, they turned into a character flaw. Too uptight, too sensitive, too controlling. I stopped inviting friends over. I didn't want to explain why Trevor sometimes walked through the kitchen shirtless, or why there was a faint weed smell drifting up from the basement every night around 10. I started taking phone calls in my car just to get a moment of silence. Some mornings, I left early and parked at the Lake Cafe before work, just to sit somewhere I didn't feel like a prisoner in my own home. It wasn't just the little messes. It was the dismissal. The way Vanessa always left 3 sips of coffee in the pot, like finishing it would be too generous. The way Trevor opened windows and left them unlocked, even after I asked twice. The laundry basket that sat on the stairs for days like a dare. One morning during breakfast, Vanessa breezed in wearing one of my sweaters, my favorite oatmeal turtleneck. "Is that mine?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice level. She didn't look up. "You weren't wearing it." "I didn't say you could take it." She looked me dead in the eye, lips curling into a smirk. "Relax, you've got like 5. She sat down across from me, pulled out my almond milk, my new carton, and poured it into her cereal like she was doing me a favor. I stared at her. She stared right back. The silence between us crackled. I wanted to scream, to throw something. But instead, I stood up and walked out the door. That's what it had become. A house full of invisible landmines, and every morning I was just praying not to explode. That night, I stood on the deck and looked out over the lake. The moon was low, the water dark and still, reflecting a version of peace I didn't recognize anymore. My sanctuary had become a pressure cooker, and I could feel myself changing. This wasn't about almond milk. It wasn't even about the sweater. It was about how easily they treated my home, my generosity, and me like a doormat they could wipe their dirty boots on. And it was only a matter of time before I snapped. Friday evening arrived with the kind of quiet I didn't trust. I came home late after a long week, tired, craving silence, hoping the tension had maybe miraculously cooled. But before I even stepped out of the car, I knew something was wrong. There were too many cars, parked along the gravel drive, on the grass, even one on the neighbor's lawn. Loud bass pulsed from inside the house, spilling out through the front windows, which had been flung wide open like a frat house in spring. I froze. No one told me about a party. I hadn't agreed to a single guest. My stomach dropped. I pushed open the door and the scent hit me first. Cheap cologne, wine, greasy snacks, and a waft of weed from somewhere deep in the crowd. Strangers everywhere. On my couches at my kitchen island, dancing in my living room like it was a nightclub. My rug, my record player, my wine glasses. I didn't see Trevor or Vanessa at first. Just bodies. Laughing. Loud music vibrating the floor. Some guy I'd never seen in my life, raised a red Solo cup at me and yelled, "You must be the cool landlord." Then he wobbled into my dining room with wine sloshing over the hardwood floor. I lost it. I stomped through the crowd like a woman possessed and found Vanessa holding court in the living room, lounging in a chair, glass in hand like she was hosting her party. Her hair was curled. Her nails were done. She was mid-laugh when she saw me and froze. "Natalie, hey, didn't know you'd be back this early." I didn't respond. I just pulled out my phone and held it up. "You have 10 seconds to shut this down before I call the police." She blinked, then laughed nervously. "Are you serious? Nat, come on, it's just a few people. There are 40 strangers in my house. It's a celebration. Trevor got a new freelance gig and I didn't wait for her to finish. I dialed 911 right there in front of her. Her expression shifted from smug to panicked in a heartbeat. "Natalie, you're really calling the cops, over a party?" Trevor appeared then, rushing in from the kitchen, holding a half-eaten mini quiche. Whoa, let's not overreact." I turned the speaker on. "Yes, I'd like to report an unauthorized party at my residence. Strangers in my home, I need them removed immediately." That did it. Panic rippled through the room. The crowd started to thin. Cups were dropped, coats snatched. People suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be. Vanessa followed me as I walked to the front door. "Natalie, seriously, you're humiliating us." "You did that all by yourself," I said coldly. The police arrived in under 10 minutes, 2 officers, calm but firm. Vanessa tried to explain. Trevor hovered awkwardly by the door, offering a weak handshake and an even weaker excuse. The officers didn't care about stories. They cleared the house. Fast. Within half an hour, the music was gone. The strangers were gone, and I was standing at my front door like a bouncer watching Vanessa's social scene evaporate into the night air. One of the officers turned to me before leaving. "You did the right thing. They can't just throw a party in your home without permission." I nodded, but I was shaking, not from fear, from finally doing what I should have done months ago. When the last cruiser pulled away, silence settled over the house like fresh snow, broken only by the low creak of Trevor dragging trash bags to the kitchen. He didn't say much, but he stayed behind while Vanessa sulked on the porch, angrily texting someone like the victim of a great injustice. Trevor glanced over at me while scrubbing wine off the granite counter. "I'm sorry," he said. "This got out of hand." I didn't answer, but I noticed he didn't try to defend her. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like someone in this house realized they'd gone too far. The day after the party debacle, the house was quiet, not peaceful, just stunned. Like it had been slapped across the face and didn't know how to respond yet. Vanessa barely came out of the basement. I heard her stomping down there, muttering under her breath, slamming drawers, and at one point screaming into her phone. I didn't care enough to eavesdrop. I was too busy lighting every candle I owned just to scrub the air of stale beer and betrayal. Then came Trevor. I expected him to disappear too. But he didn't. Instead, I came downstairs Saturday morning to find the kitchen spotless. The counter had been wiped. My Le Creuset was clean and drying on the rack, not shoved into the dishwasher where he usually put everything, enamel be damned. He turned when I entered. "Made coffee," he said. "French press, hope that's okay." I stared at him. He poured a cup and slid it across the counter like we were co-owners of a bed and breakfast. "You okay?" I didn't answer right away. I took a sip. Strong, dark, almost too good. "Thanks," I finally said. "But you don't have to play housekeeper to make up for last night." He shrugged. "I know, it wasn't cool what Vanessa did." I raised an eyebrow. "What you did too, you helped set it up, you invited people." Trevor nodded slowly. "Yeah, I did, I wasn't thinking, I got caught up." That was the first honest thing he'd said to me in months. He didn't try to defend her, didn't minimize it, just admitted it. That made me pause. "I've been fixing the cabinet in the mudroom," he added. "The hinge was loose, it was squeaking." I tilted my head. "You mean the one that's been broken for 5 weeks?" He smiled sheepishly. "Guilty." Over the next few days, Trevor's behavior changed. He walked the dog every morning before I even got up. He offered to run errands. He returned things to where he found them. Even brought home groceries, actual groceries, not chips and beer, including a new carton of my almond milk, which he labeled with a sticky note that said Natalie's. "Do not touch, I mean it." Vanessa, on the other hand, barely looked at me. She'd come upstairs only when necessary, usually late at night, moving like a shadow. I'd hear her music through the vents, low and moody, nothing like the obnoxious bass that used to rattle the walls. One night I caught her in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone while waiting for the microwave to finish. I nodded a hello. She didn't respond, just walked out plate in hand without so much as a glance. Trevor noticed it too. "She's distant," he said one evening as we both stood on the deck, watching the last of the sunset paint the lake pink. "You know how she gets when she's embarrassed." "Is that what this is?" I asked. "Embarrassment," he hesitated. "Maybe a mix, she's stubborn. Doesn't like to be wrong. Especially with you." I let that sink in, with me. The golden child turned villain. The sister who had always had it together, always given more than she got. Vanessa didn't know how to handle being exposed. Not just to me, but to everyone who saw her tantrum on the lawn when the police came. To the friends she'd invited who watched her get evicted from a party she didn't own. Trevor turned to me. "For what it's worth, I think she respects you more than she shows." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd I didn't know what else to do. "She respects nothing about me," I said. "She treats my house like a joke, my boundaries like suggestions, and me like a walking inconvenience." Trevor looked down at his hands. "I think she's scared of you," he said quietly. That caught me off guard. "What?" "You've got your life together. You're not afraid to take control. That intimidates her. It's easier to make you the villain than admit she envies you." I didn't respond. I just watched the water. His words hung in the air between us, heavy with truth I didn't want to admit. Was Vanessa jealous? Was this her twisted way of feeling powerful? I couldn't tell. But I could tell that something had shifted. And I had to be careful not to let this good behavior lull me into forgetting just how deep the damage had already gone. Because even when things look calm on the surface, the water can still be dark underneath. The calls started on a Monday. First it was Aunt Denise, then Cousin Laurie, then someone I hadn't spoken to since Grandma's birthday 3 years ago, all acting strangely polite, just a little too polite. "Hi, sweetie, how are you holding up?" Holding up from what? Then came the real question, wrapped in a voice of forced concern. "Is it true you kicked Vanessa out of the family home?" Family home. Those words made my stomach turn. I tried to laugh it off the first time. No one got kicked out. This is my house, and Vanessa was. But Laurie cut me off. "She told us it was your parents' place, that they were just letting you stay there. Honestly, I didn't even know it was yours." That stopped me cold. By the third call, I realized this wasn't confusion. It was sabotage. Vanessa had been working overtime behind the scenes, whispering twisted versions of reality into every available ear. And apparently she'd been doing it for weeks. Months, maybe. She'd told people she was being forced to leave her family home, that I was controlling, unstable, and even, God help me, emotionally abusive. "She just needs space," she'd apparently told Aunt Lydia, "and I didn't want to be in the way. I guess she resents me for being close to Mom and Dad." I could see it all so clearly now, her pacing around the kitchen on late-night calls, the occasional hushed voice when I entered the room. This wasn't just passive aggressiveness. It was a smear campaign. I'd been so focused on keeping the peace inside the house, I hadn't realized she was declaring war outside of it. And it was working. Even people who loved me were starting to ask questions. Trevor, for his part, seemed caught off guard too. I brought it up one night while we were both cleaning out the fridge. "Did you know Vanessa's been telling the family this house is actually our parents'?" He froze mid-swipe with a paper towel. "Wait, what?" "She's making it sound like I'm the squatter. Like I forced her out of a home that belongs to all of us." Trevor blinked. "I mean, I knew she was venting to your mom, but that's not what I thought she was saying." I slammed the fridge shut. "She's playing everyone, telling them I'm cruel, that I've changed, that I'm keeping her from her own family." He didn't defend her this time, just said quietly, "She has a gift for rewriting the story." That night, I called Maya. "I don't even know how to respond anymore," I said, pacing my living room while she stayed silent on the other end. "It's like fighting fog. I say one thing and she spins it into something else. How do you defend yourself against lies told behind your back?" "You don't," Maya said bluntly. "You expose them, publicly, or you let them crumble under their own weight. I don't want to be dramatic, I just want peace." "Natalie," she said, "you're already in the drama. You didn't start it, but you are in it." The next day, I ran into my neighbor, Mrs. Klein, while getting the mail. She gave me a long, slow look, then said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Hope everything's all right in there. Heard quite the commotion last week." Right, the party, the yelling on the lawn, the flashing red and blue lights. "Everything's fine now," I said tightly. But it wasn't. That night, I found Vanessa in the laundry room, folding a load of my towels. "Why are you telling people this is the family home?" I asked quietly. She didn't even turn to look at me. "I don't control what people believe." "You know exactly what you said," she shrugged. "Maybe they just finally see you for who you are." That line hit harder than any screaming match ever could, not because it was loud, but because it was cold, calculated, final. And in that moment I knew this wasn't just a sibling rivalry, it was a campaign. She was poisoning the family well and letting me drown in it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Vanessa's words echoing over and over. "Maybe they just finally see you for who you are." It wasn't the insult that got to me. It was the casualness. The ease with which she dismantled my name, my reputation, my trust, like it cost her nothing. Like she hadn't lived in my home, eaten my food, worn my sweaters, and taken up space in my life like it belonged to her. By morning, the decision was made. No more warnings, no more negotiations, no more pretending that peace was possible. I waited until they left for a grocery run, which probably meant they were buying snacks on my dime again, and called the locksmith. He arrived in under 30 minutes. "Changing the locks on your own house, huh?" he said cheerfully as he unpacked his tools. Not changing, reclaiming, I replied. While he worked, I moved quickly. Vanessa's and Trevor's essentials, bags, toiletries, coats, whatever I could fit, went into 3 plastic bins which I placed neatly on the front porch. I added a manila envelope on top, inside. A formal notice stating they were no longer welcome in the house, that all legal rights to stay had been revoked, and that arrangements would need to be made to collect the rest of their belongings. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just wrote a single sentence on the outside of the envelope. You've crossed too many lines. When they came back, it was almost dusk. I heard the car doors slam from upstairs, then silence, then rustling as they approached the front door. Then clink, click, rattle, then the knock, hard, fast, angry. Natalie, what the hell? Open the door. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, and stood near the window just out of view. Trevor tried the handle again. Is this a joke? Vanessa's voice cut through the air. Are you serious right now? You changed the locks. I walked slowly to the door and opened it just a crack, enough for them to see my face. You're not welcome here anymore, I said calmly. Trevor stepped forward. Come on, Natalie, let's talk about this like adults. I tried that, I said, several times. You can't just throw us out like garbage, Vanessa shrieked. Where are we supposed to go? You have options, I said coolly. You can stay with Mom and Dad. Or literally anyone else, but not here, not anymore. Trevor's jaw clenched. Vanessa's face turned red. This is illegal, she snapped. You'll hear from a lawyer this is my family home too. It's not, I said. This house is in my name, you're not on the deed, you're not on the lease, you're not even on good terms. She threw her arms up. Unbelievable, you always have to be the hero, don't you? The good one, the successful one, you love this, don't you? Making us look pathetic in front of everyone. You did that all by yourself. Trevor tried again. Look, we can talk, maybe we just need some space. I shook my head. You had space, 11 months of it, you burned every bridge in this house, now I'm just closing the gate. Vanessa stepped closer. You're going to regret this. Maybe, I said, but not as much as I'd regret letting you keep taking pieces of me. And then she did it. She screamed, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She's kicking us out with nowhere to go. She's abandoning her own family. Look at her cold as ice. Curtains moved. Lights flicked on across the street. Somewhere a dog barked, and I stepped outside, door still half open, and looked her straight in the eye. You made your choice when you turned my home into a battleground. Now I'm making mine. I stepped back inside and closed the door, locked it. And for the first time in months, it stayed that way. 4 days of peace, that's all I got. 4 whole days of silence, clean countertops, and coffee that stayed exactly where I left it. No muddy boots. No second-hand smoke creeping through the vents. No one stealing my almond milk and smirking while they did it, just the house. And me. And then on the 5th day she came back. I heard the knock first. Sharp, measured, too controlled to be casual. I didn't answer it. Then came the doorbell. Once, twice. A pause, then again. Still, I stayed where I was on the couch, half reading, half pretending this wasn't happening. But Vanessa doesn't vanish quietly. I finally stood, looked through the peephole, and there she was. Standing in a sweatshirt that didn't look like hers, one hand on her hip, the other gripping her phone like she was waiting to use it as a weapon. Trevor was behind her, maybe 10 feet back, arms crossed, eyes down. He looked tired. I opened the door, but only an inch, chain still latched. What do you want? I asked. Vanessa tilted her head. Wow, not even going to invite your sister in? Not even going to pretend this is normal, I replied. She exhaled, loud, dramatic. I need to talk to you. I think we've said everything already. She glanced behind her, then turned back to me and dropped it. I'm pregnant. Time froze. The words didn't hit, they slammed. She stared at me, waiting, watching, like a magician who just pulled the trigger on her best trick. I blinked. You're what? You heard me. I opened the door another inch. Are you serious, or is this another one of your stunts? Trevor shifted uncomfortably behind her. He still wasn't looking at me, just at the ground. Vanessa shrugged, one hand moving down to rest over her abdomen. I wouldn't joke about this. Wouldn't you? I asked, voice flat. You've joked about just about everything else. Manipulated, lied, screamed on my lawn. Why not throw in a fake pregnancy too? She glared at me. It's not fake. You think I'd lie about something like this just to? Yes, I cut in. I think you would. The silence that followed was suffocating. Trevor finally spoke, quietly. She told me yesterday. I looked at him, finally really looked. His face was unreadable, not excited, not joyful, just exhausted. And that's what made it worse. If this was supposed to be a life-altering revelation, why did he look like he'd aged 5 years in a week? You think this changes anything? I asked softly. Vanessa raised her eyebrows. It changes everything. I'm going to be a mother. You can barely take care of yourself. I can learn, Natalie. People grow up, people change. Not overnight and not with a performance. Her expression darkened. You want me to prove it? You want an ultrasound, a doctor's note? No, I said. I want you to leave. She stepped forward, but the chain held. Natalie, I'm pregnant. You really want to throw a pregnant woman out onto the street? The weaponization of that word wasn't lost on me. I stared her down. You're not on the street, I said. You have options, parents, shelters, friends you threw that party with, maybe even Trevor if he's still in this with you. Trevor shifted again. Vanessa looked at me like she couldn't believe I wasn't folding, like she thought the word pregnant was a magic spell that would undo everything. But I didn't feel sympathy. I felt whiplash. 4 days of peace and now this. Come on, she said quietly. Don't you remember what it's like to be scared? I almost cracked then, almost. But instead I looked her in the eye and whispered, I remember what it's like to be used. Then I closed the door, locked it, and walked away. Behind it I could hear her voice rise again, something about betrayal, something about how I'd regret this. I heard Trevor try to calm her, then silence. Just footsteps and gravel and a car door closing. I sat down on the stairs, knees trembling, heart hammering. Pregnant. Maybe, maybe not. But the part that shook me wasn't whether it was true. It was that after everything, I didn't know if I even cared. The next morning, I woke up with a single purpose. No more guessing. No more wondering if she'd twist the truth again, or worse, trap me into caring just long enough to sink her claws back in. I needed facts, protection, control. So I called Renee. Renee wasn't just a friend. She was a real estate attorney with a sharp tongue and an allergy to nonsense. We'd gone to college together, drifted apart, then reconnected a few years ago when I sold my first condo. She picked up after 2 rings. Tell me you're not calling because of your sister. I am, I said. Damn it, Natalie. We met at a little diner near the edge of town, somewhere public enough to keep things civil but quiet enough to talk. I slid into the booth, dropped my purse, and said, She showed up last night, said she's pregnant. Renee didn't even blink. Is she? I have no idea. She knows that word hits hard. She's weaponizing it. Renee sipped her coffee. Then it's time to make sure she can't weaponize you anymore. She laid it all out, legally, ethically, financially. As the sole homeowner, I had every right to remove her. I wasn't responsible for her housing, her choices, or her potential pregnancy. Family guilt, that's emotional, not enforceable. And as for money, Renee said, you cut her off. No more phone bill payments, no gas cards, no groceries. She's an adult, not your dependent. I nodded, half relieved, half terrified. If she really is pregnant, won't that make me heartless? Would you still be heartless if she weren't your sister? That question hung in the air. No, I admitted. Then act like it, she said, so I did. I sent the texts first, short, direct. Vanessa, I've spoken to legal counsel. You are no longer allowed on the property. All financial support from me ends today. If you need help, seek it through official channels. Do not contact me unless it pertains to retrieving your belongings. Anything else will be ignored. She didn't respond, which meant, of course, she'd call a meeting instead. 2 hours later, I got a message from Trevor. She wants to talk, public place. No drama, diner. I almost ignored it, but something in me needed to see it, to say the words face to face. Not for closure, but for clarity, so I went. They were already seated when I arrived, Vanessa sipping iced tea like it was any other Tuesday, Trevor watching her like a man who wasn't sure if he should run or apologize. I sat across from them and said nothing. Vanessa broke the silence first. I think you're overreacting. I let out a small, disbelieving laugh. She tried again. I know things got messy. I know I crossed a few lines, but cutting me off, that's cruel. Cruel is using people until they break. Trevor cleared his throat like he wanted to mediate. I cut him off with a glance. Vanessa leaned forward. I'm trying, okay? I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. You're not trying, I said. You're cornering me with guilt, you're manipulating everyone around you, and when it doesn't work, you throw tantrums and call it growth. God, she muttered, shoving her chair back. You're impossible, you always have been, everything has to be your way. No, I said, standing too. But this house, this life, yes. Way or no way. She looked me up and down with that familiar sneer. You'll be alone, Natalie. Keep pushing everyone away and you'll have no one left. Good, I said. Better alone than owned. She threw a 20 on the table, uncharacteristically generous, and stormed out of the diner like she was the one with dignity. Trevor didn't move. He just stared into his cup of coffee, silent. You staying with her? I asked after a moment. I don't know, he said. She's not your responsibility. He didn't answer, just lifted the cup to his lips and took a long, slow sip, like it was the only thing he could control anymore. I stood up, gathered my things, and walked out without looking back. That was the day I stopped being the cushion to everyone else's fall. There's a quiet that comes after a storm. Not just silence, but a kind of stillness that settles into your bones. I hadn't felt it in months. So when I woke up to the smell of cinnamon rolls baking and the soft clink of plates being set on the table, for once, not by unwanted house guests, I almost didn't believe it was real. It was. This time, the laughter echoing through my kitchen came from friends. Real ones. Maya brought a casserole. Erin brought fresh flowers. Kate, who I hadn't seen since last Christmas, brought wine and her signature wit. We sat on the deck overlooking the lake, bundled in sweaters, passing plates and stories and toasts. There was music, the good kind, soft, nostalgic, warm. Someone even lit a citronella candle like it was summer, even though it was clearly fall. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to go wrong. I was just living, until the knock. No, not a knock. A pounding. We all turned, startled. I stood up slowly, unease creeping up my spine like a cold finger. And then came the voice. Hi, shrill, familiar. Natalie, I know you're in there. Gasps rippled through the group. Erin whispered, Is that? I didn't answer, I already knew. I moved to the front door. My friends followed, unsure whether to stay or intervene. Vanessa was on the porch, red-faced and wild-eyed, fists pounding against the glass. Her hair was disheveled, her coat open despite the wind. Her phone was in one hand, the other hammering against the door like she'd break it. You don't get to lock me out forever, she screamed. This is my family, too. I didn't open the door. I stepped onto the porch. She stepped back like I'd slapped her with silence alone. You need to leave, I said, voice calm but steel-edged. You can't do this to me. I already did. Behind me, I heard my friends shift. I knew they were watching, but I didn't care. I wanted them to see. I wanted someone to witness this ending. You're not family anymore, she spat. And there it was, the line she thought would break me. I took one step closer, stared her straight in the eye, and said, Then it's time you stop living like you are. She froze, eyes wide, breath short. The words hit harder than a slammed door, harder than any legal notice or changed lock. This wasn't about ownership. It was about identity, about ripping away the last piece of power she thought she held, the illusion of entitlement. Behind me, the door creaked as Maya opened it. Want me to call someone? No, I said. She's leaving. Vanessa blinked fast. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, just one fragile beat of time, I saw something in her crack, something tired, maybe even lost. But then her jaw set, her eyes narrowed, and she turned on her heel. She didn't run, she didn't scream, she just walked, down the steps, across the gravel, toward her car. This time there was no Trevor, no backup. No audience except the ones who mattered, mine. The moment I stepped back inside, applause broke out, not the mocking kind, not loud, just a soft ripple of support. Kate handed me a glass of wine. Well, that was dramatic. I smiled, breathless, shaken but solid. She needed to see the line. She saw it, Maya said, and so did we. That night, long after the guests left and the candles burned low, I stood on the deck wrapped in a blanket, staring at the lake. It was quiet again. That same quiet I'd once feared might never return. But now it wasn't empty. It was earned. The morning after the door scene, I didn't expect peace. I expected escalation, another outburst. A cryptic post on social media. Maybe a visit from a mutual relative with too many questions and not enough boundaries. But instead, I got a knock. Gentle, measured, no screaming, no pounding. Just a simple knock, followed by the muffled sound of gravel under shifting feet. I opened the door slowly. Trevor stood there first, and behind him, Vanessa, not manic, not smug, just still. Her sweatshirt was clean but worn, her face was pale, lips cracked. She looked smaller than I remembered, like life had shrunk her down to size. Trevor cleared his throat. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer, just stepped aside. They didn't enter the house. They didn't try. We sat on the porch, the lake behind us catching the light in thin, quiet waves. There was a long silence. Then Trevor spoke. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Vanessa didn't interrupt, didn't roll her eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "I'm sorry too." She swallowed hard. "We lost everything, I see that now." The words didn't hit me like a blow. They landed more like dust, soft but real, heavy in their own way. I said nothing. I wanted to hear more. She glanced at Trevor. He nodded as if to say, "Go on." "I thought I could bend people into keeping me safe," she said. "I thought guilt was a currency. That if I said the right things, people would come through. You always came through." "I did," I said. "Until I couldn't." She nodded. "I don't blame you." I blinked. That alone was a miracle. "I can't live like that anymore," she added. "And I don't expect to come back in, she looked down. "We don't have anywhere else, not tonight." She didn't beg, she didn't cry, which made it feel real. I stood and walked inside. When I came back out, I handed them a single sheet of paper. Typed. 2 copies. Trevor read it first, then passed it to her. It laid everything out, temporary stay in the guest cottage only. Maximum 30 days, no access to the main house. Shared responsibilities for trash, property maintenance, and groceries. No guests, no exceptions, must be employed or actively job-seeking. Failure to comply equals immediate eviction. Signatures required. Vanessa looked up. "You wrote this?" "An hour ago," I said. I didn't know if I'd need it. But I needed to know I set the terms this time. Trevor nodded slowly. "Fair." Vanessa read the list again, then took the pen from my hand and signed. So did he. I handed them the spare key to the cottage. It didn't feel like defeat. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like boundaries with a door you controlled. As they walked across the yard, I watched them, not out of fear, but out of clarity. They weren't inside anymore. Not in the house. Not in my life the way they used to be. They were outside, living in a space that fit what I was now willing to give, not what they demanded or expected. And the difference? Everything. 3 weeks. That's how long it's been since the contract. 3 weeks of no screaming, no boundary pushing, no theft, lies, or guilt-laced glances. It still feels strange to walk through my house and find everything exactly where I left it. No coffee mugs abandoned mid-hallway. No music pulsing through the walls. Just a soft rhythm of life I'm finally in control of. The guest cottage sits across the yard, lights off most of the day, a faint curl of smoke rising from the chimney when evening sets in. Sometimes I forget they're even there. But every now and then I catch glimpses. Trevor heading out in work boots, an energy bar in hand. Vanessa pulling weeds by the fence. Walking to the corner store. Talking quietly on the phone, job interviews maybe. No dramatic confrontations. No backhanded remarks. Just behavior. And maybe for the first time in years, change. It's not dramatic, it's not overnight, but it's real. One evening, I'm on the deck with a cup of tea, wrapped in a shawl that smells like lavender and wood smoke. The lake is glass. The stars peek out through the last blush of dusk. Trevor steps onto the porch steps, hands in his pockets. "Mind if I sit?" he asks. I nod toward the second chair. He lowers himself slowly. Not the way he used to, with entitlement or assumption, but with caution. Respect. "I got hired," he says after a moment. "Maintenance at the marina, nothing fancy, but it's steady." "That's good," I say. He glances toward the cottage. "Vanessa had a second interview today. I think she's close." I nod again, more silence. But it's a good kind this time. He clears his throat. "I've been thinking about what you said about me not being responsible for her." I look over. He continues, "I always thought if I just kept the peace, stayed neutral, I was doing the right thing. But neutral isn't always noble. Sometimes it just lets the worst people win." That catches me off guard. I let the words sit. Then I say, "You kept your word, that matters." He nods, slow and thoughtful. "I don't expect forgiveness." "This isn't forgiveness," I say gently. "It's peace." A long pause. He seems to understand the difference. The breeze picks up, rustling the trees. Somewhere down by the lake, a loon calls. Trevor stands after a while. Thanks for the chair. He walks back toward the cottage without looking back. And for the first time since this all began, I feel something I didn't think I'd feel again. Stillness. Not because I've erased the damage, but because I've finally stopped inviting it back in. A year can change everything. Not in the dramatic, movie montage kind of way, but in quiet, steady moments that stack themselves into something you start to trust. The house feels different now. Not just because of the renovations, though the new paint and hardware make it feel like mine all over again. Not just because of the new couch, or the book-lined walls, or the lavender growing just outside the kitchen window. It's in the way the air sits. Unhurried, undisturbed. I threw a housewarming party last weekend. This time, no crashing guests or shattered rules, just a few close friends, homemade food, good wine, and music low enough for real conversation. The dining table was full of laughter. Not performative, not competitive, just people who showed up because they were invited and because they respected the space they entered. And for the first time in years, I felt proud, not just of my home, but of how far I'd come from the woman who once whispered apologies in her own hallway. After the guests left and I was cleaning up, I found a small white envelope tucked under a bouquet of sunflowers on the table. It was addressed to me, Vanessa's handwriting. Inside was a simple card. No glitter, no long letters, just a few lines written in dark ink. Thanks for the push I needed. I hope you're well. V, that was it. No plea for connection, no manipulation, just acknowledgement. I placed it in the drawer by the kitchen next to old keys and favorite pens, not forgotten, not displayed, just filed away. I stepped out onto the deck as the sky faded into dusk. The lake mirrored the pale clouds, soft ripples teasing the dock. I stood there alone, breathing in the peace that used to feel impossible. And I thought to myself, sometimes dignity doesn't come from a grand gesture. Sometimes it starts with a locked door and ends with you finally choosing yourself.